I remembered a game recently, this obscure little PS3 title out of Game Republic, a company that went defunct around 2011 for publishing flop after flop, and you don't expect much from the Knights Contract team. You know, you don't go looking for brilliance from the Clash of the Titans movie tie-in people. But Game Republic also handled Majin and the Forsaken Kingdom, Genji in its early years, and all of it under the purview of games industry legend Yoshiki Okamoto, the guy that produced Street Fighter II. Darkside Phil owes his ego to that guy. The game isn't necessarily ambitious at first glance. You pick your character. You wander through rural Ireland until you thoroughly understand the merits of alcohol, and you hop over to the realm of the fairies when the clues run dry, bludgeoning its horrible hell creatures to death and sucking out their souls. And I always lick the plate clean. Folklore, or folk soul in Japan, never really made waves, even in its own country. It's not quite a hidden gem, you know, it's been on store shelves, it's been written about before, it's just nobody really played it, much less understood it. They passed over it. Didn't grab them, allegedly, and that's straight from the creator himself. But folklore is bright and beautiful. It's haunting and complex, and there's a rat in it. I love a cold case. So I took it upon myself to piece the fragmented history of this incredibly fragmented game back together. It all starts with Ellen Reed, a young woman who spent most of the last 17 years in an orphanage. She says her parents died when she was a child. Maybe she drifted a while after adulthood. Then it happened. A letter from her deceased mother, sent from Dublin, Ireland.
I'm decided. We're turning back.
Wait! I must see my mother.
Miss, you'll be killed?
She couldn't even wait until the storm passed. Risked her life to reach dead-end rurality. Well, I respect a woman who doesn't mind getting wet. Meanwhile, Keats, possibly named after poet John Keats, a down-on-his-luck reporter for a failing publication, gets a call from a woman who claims she's going to be attacked by fairies.
Help! Help me! These fairies, they'll kill me!
Dan Bro really said. The pair cross paths in Doolin, a small-time Irish backwater, in the exact place. At the exact moment, a woman falls over dead on the cliffside. Is this Ellen's mother? Is this the caller? We don't know. It's possible she died from the profoundly unswallowable pill of Ellen making it to shore, drying off in the same outfit, and wandering to the very point in town at the very same moment in time as Keats meandered to the cliff asking anyone for the origin of the phone call. But in video games, life finds a way. It's possible she died at the hands of the same entity that caused a gust of wind to blast up from the water below, somehow dragging her from the cliff in a jump cut that's so deeply unclear as to mesmerize the viewer, to hurl themselves into the abyss in kind.
No, don't touch, she's dead. A murder in the village of the dead. Tell me this is a joke.
For a reporter, he sure makes a lot of baseless assumptions. When you eventually get control of the game, you're asked to pick Ellen or Keats. No worries, you can swap back at the end of any given chapter. You're never locked in, but to the point, these characters are both central to the plot. They don't go on different adventures, they go about the same adventure separately, but concurrently. That means you fight most of the same enemies, see most of the same places, and battle all of the same bosses with both characters. You effectively play Folklore through twice. It's not as pointless as it sounds, though both characters play differently and they're equally important to each plot beat for their unique contributions. Who do you choose? Ellen's reactions smack of zooey mama. Keats has never stopped using heh at any point in his 27 lived years. We're meant to believe these people aren't stupid. Doolin's a puny town, terrible beachfront, left by the wayside with only its pub and its standing stones to rope in tourists. Well, that and a little advertising. Reunite with the deceased in the village of Doolin. And it doesn't lie. You'll meet plenty of regular people in town, but at night, the pub is filled with fae folk of all kinds. Half-lives, something neither living nor dead, and each born from a wish strong enough to spin a being out of the ether. The Chungai, the Bibbler, Hortius Penates, and Jom. Disgusting people. Vile, disgusting people. Presumably Doolin is like this because of the nearby portal to the netherworld tucked away in a cave and inaccessible to most of the townsfolk, people who know better than to trifle with the fae. Imagine the smell. Apparently, certain Half-Lives are interested in Ellen and Keats. Scarecrow latches onto Ellen pretty quickly and guides her to the portal to help her find her mother. Naturally, as an Irish person, Ellen is instantly trusting of a monster wearing a Union Jack. Keats is chauffeured by Belgie, who... Honestly, Keats is pretty irritating early on. Nice special effects. Okay, cool invisible man costume, but spiritualism's been dead for 100 years, and I can't write about pseudoscience in my magazine. Yes, magical stone slabs infused demonic power into my veins, but it's only a lucid dream. Man, buy a camera. You know how much you'd make on the internet looking like that? Nearby, Ellen absorbs the cloak of She, which gives her the power to cross realms, and a Sailor Moon transformation sequence. Don't ever say that Japanese artists can't meaningfully add to a Western aesthetic. We're already juggling a lot of terminology and ideas here, but it's best to let go of the reins and let the game wash over you. The vision only comes when you surrender yourself to it, like those old stereograms. Try as I might, I never could see the airplane. Maybe they're right. Maybe there's one in there. Maybe they're just lying to make me look stupid. I guess we'll never know. Comparison is the thief of joy. I say the root of all evil, but folklore might warrant some, if only because nobody can get it right. It's not a complicated game. You move through different magical worlds, killing anything that moves to power yourself up, and beat back the boss enemy at the end of every stage. I have played a video game. Folklore is video games. To some, it's an action RPG, which is basically true. To others, it's a Pokemon-like. A line that should probably earn you a firing squad. I'd rather not give it a genre label because the actual sum of what you do in Folklore is totally unlike any other video game between its investigations and its specific brand of combat, but if at any point someone took the time to tell me that Folklore is effectively Lost Kingdoms 3, I might have bought a PS3 instead of the big Red Ring factory. Think about it. In what other game does the player battle monsters in a field in real time using other collected monsters as weapons, assigned to face buttons, which either in full or in part manifests the previously acquired monster for an attack to complete short stages and beat huge bosses? Lost Kingdoms is part deck builder. Cards have a number of uses and you cycle through your deck over the course of any given stage, where in Folklore, you slot caught monsters into your loadout and let them rip. And you're only really limited by cooldowns and a magic meter. It's also the closest living relative to Lost Kingdoms 2, and therefore instantly worth playing without knowing anything else. Ellen even looks like Terra. I couldn't find any evidence to support a real link, just another cold case for the books. But Folklore is its own beast. You move from room to room, punching out whatever you want to, and when its spirit, turns red, you can target the monster and slurp that soul up like a big udon noodle, capturing them for good. You collect a good few monsters over the course of a full run, giving you plenty of options to craft your own preferred playstyle. Do you like quaint woodland critters or war crimes? That's on you. Maybe you like aggressive attacks or big spells. Maybe you like shields, because you're a bit... But you're gonna have to travel the many realms and do battle with a horde of folk to truly catch 'em all.
I want to be the...
If you're worried that Folklore isn't worth its steep price of for free via RPCS3, copies of Folklore are about 55 Canadian on eBay, so 40 USD. In 2012, hip-hop artist Macklemore performed Thrift Shop, wherein the singer has a good time at the thrift shop with $20. Accounting for inflation and using US currency, 20 USD from 2012 is about 27 USD today, making Folklore $13 short of fucking awesome. It's a stunning game, and the only complaint I have is I can only turn off part of the HUD, reminding me that I'll forever be a virtual tourist in Doolin. You might say, why, K-Bash? Why would you want to be there? Of all places. And buddy, depressing or not, I think I'd rather have Fairy Place. Of course, it's not exactly like the real-world Doolin that inspired it, but it's pretty darn close. There's something to say about ripping a chunk out of reality and transcribing it in polygons. The real Doolin is much more colorful, but Folklore wants to save that vibrancy for the netherworld, and so keys into the doldrums of mundane rurality, the underpinning fear of the supernatural in a superstitious town, and the uncertainty of the mystery which involves more than half the residents, to wash the world in joyless tones, creating a visual pretext to escape. The netherworld may be dangerous, but it's also adventure. It's answers, it's novelty, hence the color. The various realms are not built equally. They're not all intended to be the most visually gripping places. Mind you, burning war world probably isn't supposed to evoke the same vibe as Fairy Place, but they're a free canvas for creativity, dreamt out of the ether, magical by design, and some of them aren't quite as ambitious as they could be. Keats says, "I know this isn't a dream because my imagination isn't this good." Hey man, what the hell are you talking about? You can imagine Fairy Place. Regular people bid. A lot. It's worth noting the nature of the Nether Realm here. Different realms are formed of human imagination. For example, the Fairy Realm is formed by those who believe in a blissful afterlife. Warcadia came from mankind's fear of death and war. The undersea area was once an opulent city, but as humankind explored more of the ocean, and ancient fears and legends dissipated, the realm slowly collapsed until it became the undersea ruins. You know, the map says, "Here be dragons," and all anyone can do is ask where. I would love a dragon right about now. Everything else is just grocery prices and rent. You find me another game where the Bermuda Triangle's influence was so significantly overstated that the city turned to ruins. Amazing. Hellrealm is naturally born from human fear of punishment after death. If they say I've been a bad boy, is it true? Because I'm really trying out here and I feel like society isn't giving me what I'm looking for in return. And the endless corridor was woven from humankind's eternal postulation and conjecturing about what happens after death. Sign up to our organized religion, dedicate your entire life to it, coin flip on death. Generational gag right there. You flip back and forth from dueling to these collected realms during the course of play. Every stage is effectively another step in the investigation. You wrap up your business in the Fairy Realm, get a new lead, take it back to dueling, fish around for information, and eventually you're off to Warcadia or wherever else. Progression requires both interacting in the real world with townsfolk and in the realms that, at least in real Irish folklore, run parallel with our own world, though time doesn't pass in a linear fashion in the other world. It gets a little messy, juggling the names and dueling and the motivations informing various characters' actions and otherworld drama. Maybe folklore's most successful trait is its ability to distract. Buried under a barrage of cryptic half-answers and conveniently timed setbacks, the mystery of dueling drifts further and further away from the heroes the harder they chase it. You dive in, you spin up new theories for every lost lead, but things happen, seemingly at random. Otherwise, calm characters explode, ancient phrases activate people like sleeper agents, and a new suspect, apparently a killer witch, strikes more than once. Well, you know what they say about lightning. It better learn to conduct itself or it'll be in prison for a number of years. Everything turns to noise as these hot revelatory flashes disperse in a blink, leaving you and a whole lot of level to chew through. Oh man. 2 characters and 16 chapters between them? Maybe today is the day. Motion controls of all kinds get a bad rap, and for understandable reasons. They're imprecise, they're fiddly. They create a sense of tension between the player and the game, where a sleek, buttons-only action game might feel immersive and that you're fully in tune with the player characters. Motion controls leave you negotiating your place in the relationship. Folklore made use of mandatory 6-axis controls, motion controls, but only for yanking the souls out of enemies. While it's normally harmless, a simple lock-on, pull-up motion, the bigger folk require different kinds of motions. These include timed jorks, aka folklore jork up instruction, the big throwdown, slamming a soul back and forth like Tom and Jerry, one that asks the player to keep the soul as level as possible, and the shimmy shit hemorrhage. You have to shake rapidly and stop whenever the thing stops. Red light, green light. Highly embarrassing game to play in front of people. Just comedically humiliating. Combat is not a complex dance, with only the 4 face buttons, a dash, and wide enough arenas to keep the camera happy. The only thing standing between you and your next objective, generally, is patience. Can we move on? The most challenging thing you do with either character is line up attacks. Keats, also known as Dr. Bad Touch, often demands the player close in tight to unload, and that makes his play fairly ooga, mildly booga by comparison, while Ellen fully summons monsters who will unleash their attack after a little wind-up. You end up strategizing, positioning, a scrapper or a tactician, and it makes for some decently exciting play despite the relative simplicity. What'll trip you up is elements. Every folk, every summon, every enemy has an element, minus like a handful, but no one likes those. And those elements interact with each other. Some folk are slash element, some folk are destroy element, which I personally aspire to. Sometimes a guy who looks like Destroy is a fire guy. It's hazy and you're made to figure it out in real time more often than not. What might not be apparent in footage, though, is the mechanical gulf between Ellen and Keats. And it's stuff that's easy to take for granted, but completely reflavors either playthrough. Ellen is a summoner. Her folk spawn on command and act as their own entities, either rampaging forward or unleashing some kind of attack at range. She doesn't entirely lack melee options, the same basic goblin folk Keats starts with and the lance folk acquired later on both act as an extension of Ellen in combat rather than independent summon entities, but critically, most of Ellen's folk are removed from the melee context. Her Lancer isn't even particularly competent in terms of raw damage. Instead, hers gets an additional Thunder Element property, allowing her to electrocute enemies. She isn't allowed to puncture, only tase. Both characters have access to a few exclusive folk, but more importantly, folk found in both routes aren't used the same way. Where Keats might use one more directly, Ellen's version instead spits out a status ailment. Her folk prioritize control, even passivity, ranged play. And this is reflected in her magic bar. Ellen is made to wait to recover magic power, and so she mechanically supports a stop, survey, summon, and strategize play pattern. This isn't surprising. Ellen's a fairly reserved character. She's always unsure, hesitant, and she keeps doing this ridiculous face grab whenever something kind of surprising happens. This is the face of someone who walked into an Irish pub, asked for White Claw, and got stout. Her animations reinforce this idea. Her strikes are reserved, her walk cycle reticent, she's totally willing to trust the Union Jack wearer, and this all makes sense. Ellen's a vulnerable young woman in way over her head, and literally diving into Murder Fairy World. And hell! So one expects a certain lack of surety, and it's intelligently incorporated not only into her animations, but her fundamental gameplay mechanics. Of course, we're gonna have to ignore the part where she dove off that boat instead of waiting for the storm to blow over. You know, if that character were the playable Ellen, she'd probably be jamming her fist down goblin throats, and it's a shame they didn't just cut to her boat pulling in safely. Little Thing undermines a lot more than you'd expect. Now, Keats is a little different. Keats is all instinct, or at least Belgie implies as much just before your first combat. Just a reporter my ass. This guy left his desk for 5 minutes and flipped his shit on every denizen of the netherworld from melee range. Guy's a damn menace. It's not that every one of his attacks is a melee strike, it's that most of them are. He doesn't usually summon folk, choosing instead to embody them briefly, channel them using his own body as a conduit. It's flashy and exciting, not too far off from something like Shaman King, wielding the spirits of the dead as weapons. In that sense, Keats is either more naturally in tune with the netherworld because of his confident personality, or because of the power he was gifted, making him unable to control folk to the same degree, unable to fully manifest them, but able to channel them instinctually. It's hard to say. Remember, Ellen could only enter the netherworld with the Cloak of She, which gives her great power, but she's still a scared outsider, able to materialize folks' souls completely, but not sure enough to pile-drive enemies with them. Keats' power was apparently granted by proxy from Ellen, which gave him a monstrous inbuilt strength, a whole new body, and one you can transform into briefly during play after filling up a meter. It's a crushing power-up, but also just a fairly standard rage mode a la God of War. Unlike Ellen, Keats' magic bar drains as he uses folk in combat, but nearly instantly refills if he takes a break from the action. It's designed like this to promote rapid, aggressive, button-slamming play. He's a masher, and honestly, kind of a scrub. He doesn't even get status ailment folk the way Ellen does. They're much more straightforward overall, cutting to the chase like a disillusioned reporter would. Okay, Sweet Pea, you're devoid of whimsy and it shows. Boss enemies add to Folklore's campaign of confusion. They look innocent enough. They're mostly just bigger folk, mythological creatures you need to handle in specific ways to pass. Nothing too weird.
Oh, get it out of here! Oh, what?
The first boss is pretty easy all around. It's a good tutorial for the rest of the game because every fight after will tap into this boss's need to be hit with a specific folk, or rather a specific type of folk, to greenlight further damage or progress to the next stage of the fight.
Oh, no!
Freeze the tail with ice, and cut it off with slash. You get the picture. The same basic pattern crops up in battle after battle. You can't damage the boss directly, so you need to make it vulnerable. You knock it over with the right element, you hit its weak point with a contextually relevant attack. You employ a combination of elements to crack the nut, as it were. Folklore is a pretty typical action RPG played straight, but its boss battles are effectively combat puzzle solving, and they will trip you up if you aren't paying attention. The number of times the solution wasn't obvious, or required a bizarre combination of folk. And worse than that, remember, Keats and Ellen both encounter different folk, different possible moves, and their shared folk are sometimes mechanically different, meaning that folk used to fight bosses in Keats' run don't necessarily translate to Ellen's. It's a bizarre feeling, especially playing the game how I did, chapter by chapter, back and forth between characters to get a more complete picture of each chapter's events. Man, I just used you to beat this guy earlier. What do you mean you're useless now? Folklore challenges the player to enter two distinct characters and to handle things how those characters might, using their own strengths. Instead of thinking themselves above the game, it asks players to understand it. Do you feel something? Not a Folklore spins its yarn in some diverse ways. The few fully rendered cutscenes are pretty striking, but the budget can't sustain them. Most of the game's information is delivered in text boxes, usually between simple character models, and where important interactions are concerned, Folklore presents them in Bayonetta-esque panels with accompanying text. I guess I shouldn't give Bayonetta that much credit. Folklore precedes it by 2 years. Maybe Bayonetta owes something to Folklore. It gives the characters their charisma, locked in their poses, without splurging for additional voiced dialogue or sucking up time and resources with opulent cutscenes. The problem is, Folklore's real pretty. A lot of potential. We don't get a lot of games set in Ireland. We especially don't get a lot of Irish characters who speak like regular people instead of
"You little paddy bastard! You thieving McCunt!" You got it all wrong, Welsh! All wrong! It was French, I promise! Not really. Happens to me all the time.
Yeah, that. Not to say that the actors' accents are good, I just think the whole package presents conservatively and it's begging for more opulent opportunities to strut its shit off. Keats is interesting and smarmy, and he isn't drooling over Ellen the entire game. He's aloof and irritating, and it's awesome. Ellen is traumatized and innocent, trying to make sense of her life and navigate her past to fully grasp herself. These are compelling characters, and because of a presumably limited budget, they don't come alive as readily as they could, and it's a huge disservice. Even just losing out on voice dialogue stings when they have such potential to hop on stage and act. And barely do, especially in a game with such a complex back-and-forth story. It is legitimately challenging to keep up with plot events, even playing each character's chapters back-to-back, back and forth, because so much information is presented so flatly. The compromise makes sense, it's just not enough. A Folklore story is, for lack of a better term, concerning. The intro is simple: find Ellen's mother who bizarrely sent a letter years after her death, and for Keats, track down whoever found him and figure out what's going on in town. Doolin isn't a big place. There's a handful of characters holed up in tiny houses, snapshots of quiet lives lived all along the main drag, and that's about it. Not a whole lot of info to go on. The problem is, each character is relevant for different reasons, and you end up rifling through the entire town to piece new developments together, and that's all paired alongside the Other Realm drama. But what's hidden inside the screw-off base of this vibrator?
Hand me knob, you fucking agent!
You meet Suzette just after... They should have killed me a long time ago. You meet Suzette just after the woman falls from the cliff. She watches Ellen faint, helps out, and eventually fills the player in about her backstory. Her mother was abusive, accused her of killing her older brother, and her dad died falling off that very cliff years ago. She gives each character a memento that opens a gate to the Other Realm, and they go. In the Other World, both characters are led to defeat the Folklore, the end bosses of any given realm, by one of two factions. Keats falls in with Levane, and Ellen joins forces with the Lord of the Fairies, both being promised what they're looking for by the respective faction leader for assistance. Afterward, Ellen meets Suzette's father, and Keats meets her mother, the woman who fell off the cliff and who attacked Ellen earlier. Here, the player learns about a past tragedy at the church, something to do with their son, Hervé. Suzette's deceased brother. A Nemazine, an otherworldly tick that feeds off the memories of the dead, suddenly bursts, which gives us a flashback of Suzette's mother writing the letter to Ellen, luring her to Doolin for revenge, for what we don't know. And a second flashback of the father being pushed over the cliff by an unknown assailant, and somehow, remarkably healthy and cogent after the deathly fall, pens a letter and shoves it in a bottle which Suzette retrieves, having sat on the beach for 17 years after we deliver this revelation. No one snatched that up? Didn't get taken away with the tide? 17 years? Folklore Story is a little bit rough. It's hard to remember. Folklore Story is messy. It's a draft, desperately in need of a second pass. This is Major Plot Beat 2, and we've already had incomprehensible jump cuts. I'm showing you unedited footage now. By the way, you're looking really good today. And events so bizarre as to snap the thread of believability from the force of the whiplash. It's not too complicated, and players aren't stupid. It's delivered in a profoundly unclear way, deliberately obfuscating critical information in any given revelatory scene that would unravel the entire plot if anybody actually explained, or if we ever got a complete perspective. Nature of a mystery, sure. The bigger mystery is how Bro penned a letter and bottled it lying mangled on the beachfront. Magical elements complicate every part of the plot. The pair are in any given realm at the same time, but only encounter each other closer to the end of the game, so they never team up. A character explains that time and space are measured differently here, so naturally we wouldn't encounter her, which only compounds the magical nonsense factor and actually unravels late in the game. And further, the Cloak of She that Ellen absorbed gave us powers, which is maybe true, but certainly isn't visually communicated. She got a cloak, we got stone slabs rising from the ground. It's all very abstract, and the rationale of the world is largely left to, well, magic, and that can be frustrating for something you might be earnestly trying to piece together, like a detective might. Maybe it's time I put down the pipe and hit the bottle instead. Look at this dead guy. Why did they give him such an ass? I can't even compete. You eventually learn that a string of murders took place in Doolin years prior, and that Ellen here was in Doolin 17 years ago. The old woman says she'll reveal everything, winds up dead. Don't that just damn well figure? A lot of the plot revolves around a Dr. Lester and an incident concerning him and a young patient of his 17 years ago, Suzette's dead brother, Hervé. And it isn't long before Lester's bumped off in turn.
Who is it?
I can't with the stock dramatic hits. In the other world, we finally meet Hervé. So that's just Keats, right? We're all on board here? That's Keats? You even talk to him with Keats. He says he's a fan of Keats magazine. Okay, so either Hervé didn't die, or Keats is a ghost, right? Right? This is what folklore does to the player. You make assumptions. The story shines much brighter than you'd expect in those moments because it feels like some incredible treasure is lurking in the murky pond, a mind-blowing eureka moment. And you're so close. And it naturally means the journey is worth far more than the payoff. Truly a game for goons. Hervé's ghost is headed to the swamp of oblivion to be forgotten forever because his existence apparently only caused harm. Bleak. Naturally, we move to stop him and eventually succeed, but not before the otherworld conflict finally manifests. Levane and the Fairy Lord are apparently enemies, and we're not certain why, but we know that Ellen is furthering the Fairy Lord's goals, maybe by accident, and the much creepier Keats is furthering the designs of this strange woman. I like that the protags never really align until the end. It's a dynamic that feels sorely lacking from games. Like, I don't like her. She got cooties, ew! A new character appears, Cecilia. Okay, so that's Ellen, right? We're all on board with that? That's Ellen, right? It turns out Hervé had a friend named Cecilia. A letter in the church says she died. Soon enough, we learn that Ellen is, in fact, Cecilia, through Keats. Okay, so which of these people are dead? To save a lot of time and confusion, this is how the story advances. New information recontextualizes old information, yo-yoing back and forth through varying degrees of understanding. You can't trust anything you hear on first pass. You said the mortgage rate was 4.3 yesterday! That's right. So why is it 5.2 today? Just is. Because you are lied to. The plot makes a point of telling the player that Ellen caused the 3 Doolin murders 17 years ago. A 5-year-old girl, Ronaldo, Hervé, and Ryan. But it's eventually recontextualized when we learn the real culprit was Ellen's mother, Ingrid, for 2 of the cases. Years ago, Hervé had a terminal illness. In a bid to save him, Cecilia attempted to contact the fairies and spilled her own blood to do so. Unfortunately, she was trapped under the henge for some time and almost died, and required an immediate transfusion. Hervé was the only one with matching blood. So he died doing something selfless, because she was his friend. And Suzette's parents lost their minds, blamed her, and it forced Ingrid to intervene, sending him over the cliff. She also took out Ryan, who aggressively approached her daughter asking about the fairies. She killed him for being a belligerent, gibbering hick. And Suzette's mother, the instigator of the entire plot, planned revenge for years, only acting once she found Ellen's residence, which backfired when Ingrid somehow found out and murdered her moments before the players arrive in town. It's just a heap of convenience, held together by a thread. But it gets more complicated because the other in-game murders featuring the hag aren't actually the hag or Ingrid, because Suzette is also an active player in the plot. Your first friend, your helper, slays both the woman who was about to reveal the past to Keats and was the actual killer of Dr. Lester. With the hag, Ingrid only showing up to helpfully withdraw the knife, and Suzette even kills Ingrid before the plot wraps up. It's like a shotgun blast of terror. Everybody is nuts. Everyone is a problem. At one point, one of the townsfolk uses hypnosis to help Ellen remember the childhood she forgot as Cecilia. Which, no. But anyway, the entirety of the other realm is shown to be built of the memories its visitors have, meaning the people you meet are not distinct ghosts, but constructs built of memory. So Hervé is confirmed to be Keats, and Keats is just a manifestation of Ellen's latent memory of a drawing she made of Hervé as an adult. He's a half-life, just like Scarecrow or Belgie, both born of a wish for Hervé to live on and protect Ellen. It's stunning, aspirational to a fault, plays with the occult premises in a way that I could never dream of. It's the real reason controlling folk came to him innately. He sprouts from the netherworld, which of course begs the question of how he didn't realize, but I'm sure it's tucked away in a text box, in a side quest, somewhere. Let's not start asking questions. The final segment lets you play as either Ellen or Keats. You're made to stop the kind of twist villain fairy lord for attempting to cut off the real world and the other world, which he believes is poisoning it beyond repair. And he's basically right. Its enshittification scales with human world enshittification, but the other world sprouts from the human world. And if the realms are separated, according to Levain, humans will have no place for their fears and anxieties about death, etc., to go, forcing them to bottle up in people, leaving them crushed under the emotional weight. Apparently it would annihilate the species, so we beat the old guy down. Also, I don't know. I think I would simply become the struggler. I think I would press on and face the horrors. I'm different. There's an entirely unnecessary battle against Levain despite the two of us siding with her. She quite literally goes, "Well, we had to fight eventually." And that isn't true. That isn't true. You made that up. Y'all devs just had a model lying around. You lying fucks? The final boss is, of course, Scarecrow. I have no idea how this could be considered a spoiler or confusing. Scarecrow is a half-life born of a very young Cecilia's wish for people to fear death, so the world would be better. If people fear death, they wouldn't put themselves in danger or, presumably, harm others. Can't blame a 5-year-old for thinking people would follow the golden rule. Scarecrow takes it all to a twisted level by absorbing all the fears in the Netherworld core. All of them. Just like that, with the aim of crossing to the human world and terrorizing them into empathy, forcing human betterness, as it were. We slap him down in a protracted boss fight, and he realizes that Cecilia's wish is no longer valid as Ellen has grown up and changed, so he ceases to be. Keats, Ellen's other created half-life, persists in the other world. At his imagined magazine space, a fragment of a vision of a person, an entire life created by someone else, but mysteriously capable of free will. It's why he's so childishly all the time, a kid's version of cool. Keats is passively protective of Ellen and helps her out directly in a few scraps, but also resists her and seemingly doesn't mind her walking into danger unprepared. He's rat bastard boyfriend material, and it's easy to see why the twist is so hard to accept. The game spends time feeding you contrary information, misleads you aggressively, and in that sense, the mystery is incredibly successful. I think it pushes the envelope more than necessary, and it makes for a story that only kind of makes sense on a look back, and definitely one that doesn't stick. You're left to accept a lot of ideas as given. Levain is a 5,000-year-old druid who persists until specifically Ellen shows up. those kinds of things. The story, in a nutshell, is the type of tale where if you dig too deep, if you list out all of the events in order, you come to understand all the machinery underpinning the plot and realize how constructed it is by design. It doesn't feel as authentic or natural as it could otherwise. Doesn't mean it's worthless or can't resonate with people, it surely did. I'm just really struggling to be like, damn, Keith's journey is similar to my own. Of course, the real story of Folklore has maybe more to do with its history, its developer, and specifically its executive director. Originally, Folklore was revealed at E3 2006, presenting as the next generation of dark fantasy before its old title, Monster Kingdom, flashed on screen. Monster Kingdom is the name of an existing property. It's the franchise title of the PSP monster battler, Monster Kingdom Jewel Summoner, a little-known game from small-time developer Gaia, or maybe more recognizably, Koji Okada's short-lived studio that formed after his departure from Atlus in 2003. Apparently he and Okamoto were friendly because Folklore was intended to be a companion piece to Jewel Summoner, a game from a separate studio, though both Folklore and the Japanese release of Jewel Summoner shared a publisher, Sony. Gaia staff members contributed to Folklore as well, handling the quote, monster generation system, but whatever the nature of the specifics was, Folklore ultimately pivoted from the Monster Kingdom title to its current one in the face of poor sales associated with the Monster Kingdom name. Jewel Summoner just didn't command the respect to slap its brand on something else. Koji Okada expressed at least a little frustration with the state of the industry in 2005 during Jewel Summoner's development. Allegedly, he wanted to make something original that harkened back to the basics of gaming, and all players saw was some Pokemon-like, presumably unaware it was from one of the Megami Tensei guys. Maybe it was bad. Maybe it wasn't a vibe for the times, maybe Bro was flat washed. When it flopped and Folklore became its own game, Monster Kingdom died. Gaia's final non-iOS game was Coded Soul, a 2008 PSP game built on the bones of Monster Kingdom, of course, but more importantly, included monster designs pulled directly from Folklore.
Yo, God!
With connectivity, cross-console features between the two titles. Not that anyone in the West ever accessed them. Coded Soul was only ever released in Japan, rendering those cross-play features incompatible with non-Japanese PS3s. A whole inbuilt feature, totally untouchable. Jewel Summoner informs Folklore, which lives on in Coded Soul, and it's one of gaming's most utterly unknown lineages. I wonder if Okada and Okamoto realized that, in the way these games connect but were summarily forgotten, they'd effectively created video game Folklore. Of course, I'm waxing poetic about something that was cynical by design. Folklore shipped with plenty of DLC add-ons, additional costumes and folk, and a few side quests, probably demanded by the money people, but they're here. We've got the Christmas outfit, just painted right over. The official art of Keats. Oh, Kamen Rider! Yeah, I think that appears in Irish Folklore. Folklore's title changed because of sales information. Jewel Summoner had Monster Kingdom slapped in front with the intention of making a franchise. It wasn't about making something new, but creating something that would then become old. Publishers may not like taking chances on unproven concepts, but it's a real catch-22 when they won't bankroll novelty, and when the people who believe they're the moment are actually doing the same old business. Money is a factor in this story. Game Republic needed funding for the game, and apparently Okamoto pushed pretty hard for it. But the caveat was that it needed to be a PS3 game, and it had to be a PS3 launch title. Folklore was in development around the same time as Genji 2.
Stages of the game will also be based on famous battles which actually took place in ancient Japan. So here's this giant enemy crab.
And due to budgetary and other development constraints, missed its launch date by 6 months. Even worse, it only sold 40K in Japan, which is crushing, especially when the guys upstairs expect big things from their long-established dev and his studio. He clearly spent a lot of time thinking about why the game failed to perform. For years, according to Okamoto, the studio kept waiting for its home run, and it never got one. The studio's output trickled on until 2011 when, after too many failures, and Okamoto allegedly in a bad place, deleting his personal blog from the internet, Game Republic finally dissolved. Okamoto went on to make a couple of fairly cynical mobile games that outperformed the entirety of his previous 10 years in the industry. One of them outperformed Pokemon Go financially. No reason to look back. In a video posted to one of his YouTube channels, Yoshiki Okamoto did a quick breakdown of Folklore's development history, mentioning the title change, but also firing off a few key insights into why he believed the game was a financial failure. And to him, it boils down to the simple fact that nobody could understand the game. Folklore's big commercial parodies the game's 6-axis features, sucking the souls out of monsters by having the actors rip their controllers upward like they're fishing, and instantly killing their friends. Funny enough, we like a terrible skit, but when they cut to play, it was a searing few seconds of nothing. Nothing that actually demonstrated the game in sum. Nothing that demonstrated what's exciting and interesting about Folklore, nothing really keying in to its core mystique. You know, what was Folklore? Exactly. The Japanese title, Folk Soul, isn't particularly evocative either. People might immediately pick up on the term soul, but folk mostly just sounds like fork. Fork soul. Are we eating ghosts? According to Okamoto, the box art was totally unparsable, at least in his mind, and beyond its commercial and title, it wasn't easy enough to explain in a few short sentences. It's a game where you capture monsters and use them to kill more monsters, and you play as 2 characters, but it's the same story, but you need to play it twice for the full context, but also you need to jump between the real world and the other world, which is like 5 worlds to solve a mystery, and that's pretty weird and hard to follow, but listen, it's because of the folklore, and we wanted to use Irish folklore so the monsters all have names that Irish people are going to be so mad about when they hear how Americans are pronouncing them. It's really not all that complicated. Lost Kingdoms 3. But not everyone knows Lost Kingdoms 2, and you certainly can't sell it like that. Not everyone plays Zenith Fiction, and so Folklore was, in the minds of people, a blob. His assessment is accurate. One line that sticks out to me, though, is people wouldn't understand why they'd want to play. But I think it's obvious. Not because of the hokey Lost Kingdoms comparison, it's because, just looking at the box, it evokes the exact kind of intrigue an obscure game enjoyer innately understands. It's boldly itself, in a market of copycats and schlock. It's speaking my language. An action RPG with monster collecting spun out of Irish myth, and it's a murder mystery to boot? Look at these aesthetics. Look at these character designs. Folklore is sumptuous. Folklore is a whole-ass meal. And I'd take my time running it back just as happily as any return to Fable or whatever other fantasy action game from the era. But I lived in rural Canada when everyone I knew was buying a 360 because Halo was a fun game to play with your friends, and the PS3 was for rich kids and people who called it Galo. Sometimes paths never cross. He seems to think the confusing story and the gameplay were weak points, and I think that's true for a certain kind of player, but whether intentionally or not, I think it's artistically successful. Irish folklore isn't cutesy or soft, it's mean-spirited. It's pernicious, packed with freaks and creeps, and it reflects humankind perfectly. Not that this kind of mythology is uniquely dark, but it's cautionary. In some cases, the other world is more peaceful than Earth, and in other cases it's terrifying, it's confusing, it's contrary, which is exactly why it functions as an extension of humankind, why it's represented so well here. Everything about folklore, from its labyrinthine twists to its shifting character motivations to its revelations, all of its narrative work creates a sense of mistrust and unease. And while it's easy to point out plot flaws, things that just don't work, it's also supremely appropriate, here of all places, with this specific mythological framework. So much of folklore genuinely confuses the player. You're shown a cutscene, shown it again with context, and shown it again with further context. You see otherwise rational people acting bizarrely under the influence of the Fae. It keeps you questioning how well you know things, which is, of course, not at all. Normally this kind of thing annoys me, because this information cannot possibly be pieced together with what you're given, but context is everything. And this conceit extends to play, the same way Keats and Ellen share functionally different but otherwise identical folk, the way the game sometimes demands the player to figure out the bizarre logic underpinning progression, or to get this specific folk to pass a blocked area, follow the right clock enemy to move through the maze. Use these specific elements to beat the boss down. The way this specific room asks you to keep this one weak enemy alive, but to kill any other spawning folk to unlock a door, in one of the most confusing moments of regular play. The game's internal logic feels slippery, fairy tale-esque. What you do in Folklore is just as confusing and uncertain as the complex identity of Irish mythology. It's a game that asks more of the player than most of them are ever going to give.
Hey, it's K-Bash. Huge thanks goes out to my $4 patrons. Check them out. Beautiful. And double special thanks goes to my extra generous patrons who are Adam Welsh,
Air Pirate Sid,
Acropolion,
Alfred Coria,
All the Singularities,
Alpha 42,
Ampersand,
Andrew,
Redacted,
Angel Rivera,
Anthony,
Aria,
Aaron,
Ashley, my wife, my darling. I asked K-Bash to make you smile. Also, hi, Merrick.
Azrael,
Azura,
Atticure, Axinate,
Bear Skeleton,
Basement Dweller,
Bosch 7,
BK,
Do Crimes,
Ben M,
Beguile, Big Papa Spray,
Blake Against the Machine,
Wargle Hargle, Blossom Dante,
Boom Dead,
BH Operator,
Born in Shadow,
Brandon S,
Brandon Hesse,
British Gooch,
Cow,
Cajun Lady,
Cakesar, Can I Cuss on Here?
C-Dub,
Catgirls Are Real,
Caesar T,
Hero Hero,
Court Fox,
Cordit,
Chris Bromo,
Cody Golding,
Comfy Moogle,
Commie Hug,
Couch Mo,
Cosmetic,
Crabmonger, Fish Finagler,
Crashgers,
Crater, Crispy J,
Mono 19D,
Cup of the Puppa,
CW Glassworks,
Danky Stag, Swaggy
David
Bag,
Castillo,
Dara,
Dash Granny,
Decode,
Deadword,
Dead,
The Strega,
Dingus
Don't
Bat,
read this out loud. Oh no, he did
Doodle
it!
Flu,
Doug Prince,
DJ, Professor K,
Dr. Cullen, PhD,
Drop the Bait,
The Protagonist,
Dylan Winston,
El Jaguar,
Elias,
Elpio,
Elsa,
Emperor Pickle,
Empty Tenshi,
Eric
Monticello,
Excalibur Shine,
Exorian Hagen,
Snar,
Fail Knight, American's just happy to be
Burns
here,
Maximum,
Fuzillion,
Forte Noir,
Frog Vorbis,
Frosty_Gamer_,
Garen Guarantee,
Giggle Bites,
Glasses Kohai,
Glyph Seeker,
Nine Cat,
Dobo Bobo,
Goose,
6112,
Gregor 700,
Gray, the darkest black,
Garcory,
Gucci Plant, Hatsune Miku's Crack House,
Harkosh,
Demon, Game and Station,
Hermit J,
Hi, Pixie,
Hebe, Honey Mutts,
Horn Tiger,
How do you know?
Huey,
I just took 7 grams of magic mushrooms and now I'm lost in the woods!
I'm supporting K-Bash just because I wanted to make this part of the video longer.
Inferno Galore,
Ingenious Cloud,
IOPG,
I punched a sandwich.
It's not bad.
It's time to sue.
It's not good.
Ivy Ruth Langley,
Jack Hydrate,
Jacob,
Jalopy,
Jane,
Jams, Jank Dankins,
Jason Lasky,
Jaden,
James Vaughn,
Jar of Screaming Eyes,
Jay Drito,
JL Savarus,
Jay Deus, JK Hedgehog,
John Bo the Joker,
Jordan Joyner,
Jorzy Burden, Juicy Frost,
June,
K-Chan,
Keegan Too Cool,
Keith the Thief, Key the Iron Idol,
Kata Snack,
King Kuma,
Keej,
Knife Pipe,
Kitty Caddis,
Clock, K-Noe,
Kong 2020,
Kraden,
Crazy Dark Chocolate,
Cropaton,
Heist,
Kyle, not that Kyle, KZ Excellent, Lady Weave,
Laundry Mob,
Lego Sid,
Lethal Nibbles,
Linkle,
Little Big Trouble,
Loathsome Dung Eater,
Juan,
Low Res,
Low Fat Moger, Lucas Boy,
Blood Mac James,
Lunatic,
Magic Meows,
Malamatic Wolf,
Manapool,
Manic Pixie Space Pirate,
Now Fever,
Mara Ganger,
Marcules,
Marcus Rambles,
Maxwell B, Maximum Dog,
Meaty Smacks,
Mechanized Memories,
Meeple Puppet,
Mega Boy E Nasty,
Melly Tan,
Metal Gear Gaseous,
Michelle Citrano,
Mike DeVere,
Mikusagi,
Lynn Adams,
Moa,
Bobby Dobby, Big Titty Gop, GF Coin,
Monochrome Only,
Monochrome Rainbow,
Morgana Black,
Maury,
Mort, Modi,
Mr. Pee Pee Poo Poo Caca,
Mr. Yeety Dabface McYoink Bomb,
Myrna,
Nyranu, Nito Torpedo,
Neon Dwarf,
Nick Krishnan,
Nifty Rex,
Not Nobel,
Nuggy,
Okami,
OJ McMuffins,
Old Burgle, Old Man Cranberry,
Ollie,
Omni Nerd Zero,
137,
Only LK,
The Plant,
Oscar,
Paperland,
PBK,
Pandemic Cowboy,
Pelagic
Undulation,
PK Gaming,
E-Mike,
Popular Hitman, Prismatic Dan,
Pringle, Pringle,
Probably
not Grady,
Project Darklight,
Punch Fighter Champion,
Honosaurus Rex, Quasar McDougal, Quillworth,
Raging Ataraxia,
Bill Beans, Reggie Rodriguez,
Renteca
Bond, Ringed Relay,
Rowlett's Bowtie,
Roylondo,
RP Gamer,
Ryan Michelle,
Saigon Man,
Salsa, Salty Smasher,
Gabrius,
Scribe Slendy, Sakai no Award,
Sensual Coder, Saphirium,
Sexy Bionicle GF,
Shy,
Nintendo,
Shut Up, Wesley,
Silver Bear 909,
Sin,
God!
Sir Doodle's alive.
Seriously tired of waiting in line.
Sir Newt, Sir Giggles XD,
Sir Slurpsalot,
Sir Speedster,
Skyward Lead, Sleepy Wabbit,
Slippy Sloppy Bippy Boppy,
Snart, Small Turtle House,
So Zeta Dad,
Sock'em Boppers, Suckdolager,
Space Lizard,
Sports, Spider Dad, Squidgin, Squishword, Star Night Sky, Streffin Paddles,
Super Dingus,
Super Sandwich Guy,
Taya Toxin,
Shorn Chubbington, Terrence Swift, The Big Bubby, The Clown Prince of Cringe, The Good Lord has blessed me, hallelujah!
The Green Loki,
The
Crispy Boy,
the Peacemaker Pyro,
the Salt
the
Knight,
Nomad,
the Real McCoy,
the Toasted One,
Big Dick Mystic,
Thresh, Rips Heart,
Tiggles McGuffin,
Tim Lobster,
Timid the Writer, Tony Jones, the Legend,
Total Play,
Travis Edwards,
Tropical Avera,
Twiddle Chungus,
Ty Guy 9001,
Type A Grapefruit,
Vid, Vacant Plaza,
Valenris,
Venom, Vice Pop, Video Gore,
Vic, Volkendo,
Lucky and Get Bright in My Bag,
Raposa, Wayne is Boss.
We Are So Cave Back,
Weed Trash,
Waylon,
Where Am I? Help?
Whiskey Dono,
Widgie,
Winter Solstice,
Win TV,
Wrenchim, Zanny Tanner,
Shion D, Stravius,
Yero 12,
Yashichi,
Yay
Kundo,
Zachary Lives, Zachary V,
Zanasso,
Sane the Impure,
Sane the Pure,
Zed Slayer Gamer,
Zero
Salazar,
Zenova,
Cyberpunk. If you'd like to help support the show, unlock new long-form projects, and help me keep improving, check out my Patreon. We got lots more videos in store. Stay tuned for more. K-Bash out.